And in order for you to be ready for this test, you need to review a couple of things. First thing you should do is study last week's quiz on sections 8.1, 8.2, as well as the homework worksheets 8.1 and 8.2. Okay, let's take a look at last week's quiz. So here's last week's quiz. If you happen to have it, please pull it out. Notice that last week's quiz, it wasn't just 8.1, 8.2. We threw in radicals. And yeah, that's very important stuff, simplifying radicals. But since we're already in Chapter 8, we're not going to go over 7.3 or 10.2. We're only focusing on Chapter 8. So on last week's quiz, I wouldn't even worry about the first 8 questions, which was on simplifying radicals and changing rational exponents to radical form. We're just going to focus in on numbers 9 through 22, the rest of them, right? So you're only going to focus in on the 8.1 and 8.2 section. So I would do all of these. The second half of last week's quiz, I would go back and do them all over again. Some of these will be exactly the same, all right? Some of them will be exactly the same. Let's also review section 8.1. Section 8.1 was heavily on vocab, and this test will be heavy on the vocab, okay? We need to remember, and this is from the 8.1 notes. So if you have this, you should also study this. You need to know what a degree is. The degree is the highest exponent. We also need to know what standard form is. Standard form is when it's in order from highest exponent down to smallest with the number at the very end without a variable. That number, by the way, is called the constant. Something else you need to know. Leading coefficient, when it's in order, what number is out in the front, right? So all these vocab words are going to come out, and they're going to be a significant amount of points that just come from vocab. Okay, so for example, let me just give you an example. Let's say negative 2x to the third minus x to the fourth plus 5 take away 2x. Okay, so if I told you to write that in standard form, what would you do? Because that will be a question on the quiz. What would you do? Now, it's not just x to the fourth. You got to include the sign that's in front, right? So your first term will be negative x to the fourth. The next term would be what? Minus 2x to the third, and then? Minus 2x, and then? Plus 5. Perfect. So you're going to get a point just for doing that. I think on maybe 1 or 2 questions. Super easy, just rearranging it. You're going to get another point by me asking you to state the leading coefficient. Now, don't think that this is a leading coefficient because it's not in order, right? Down here it's in order. So what would your leading coefficient be? Leading coefficient will be -1, right? There's a -1 right here in front. That's a leading coefficient when it's in order. How about the constant?
5.
All right, that's 5. The constant is 5. Perfect, the one at the very end. So I think we have the vocab down. Standard form is when it's in order. Leading coefficient is a number out in the front when it's in order. Constant is a number at the end without a variable. Sometimes there is no constant. How about degree? What's a degree?
4.
Degree is the highest exponent, 4. So yeah, degree is the highest exponent, 4. So all those vocab words will come out on the quiz tomorrow. Oh yeah, one more thing. I know I wrote all over this thing. Sorry about that. But what if I told you to give me a classification, first and last name, based on this one that says negative x to the fourth, minus 2x to the third, minus 2x plus 5. The first name, and again, this page of notes is what tells you your first name. The first name is based on the degree. So what's that one going to be? Quartic. See that? 4 right there? Quartic. Your first name's quartic. And your last name is based on the number of terms. There's 1, 2, 3, 4. Polynomial. Because over here it's based on the number of terms. And if it's 4 or more, you just say polynomial. Now, don't think, you should memorize these guys. You should memorize the first name names, memorize the last names. But I will give you a list. But they're not going to be in order, and they're not going to be organized like this. All right? I want to give you different words, like quartic, and then cubic, and then binomial, and then linear, and then poopynomial. Right? I want to make something up. Right? That's not even a real word. All right, so I'm going to throw that in the mix also. So yeah, you're supposed to have these memorized, but I am going to give you a word bank, but just a little warning, 2 of the words aren't even going to be real. I'll make something up like poopynomial or something like a lotonomial, I don't know, whatever. So there's going to be some words that are made up, so you got to be familiar with how to classify. You got to be able to identify the names. So please make sure you study these notes, because that's a significant amount of easy questions on the test. You're not even doing any math, you're just memorizing the vocab words, okay? So this is a good page of notes, 8.1 to study, okay? And like I said, going back to the quiz, it's good to practice, because we are going to have 8.1 stuff where you're adding polynomials, where you're subtracting polynomials, where you're rearranging into standard form. And like I said, the classifying, kind of like right here, I give you a list. Quadratic, linear, binomial, quintic, see, quartic, broccoli. What? Broccoli doesn't belong there. I just threw that in there. So you're going to have a list just like that. We're also going to have these guys where we have to solve an equation by simplifying first, right? So we should be able to, does anybody want to see one of these? 21 or 22? 21, okay. So first thing to do is to simplify both sides. You're going to go 6 times m, that's 6m. 6 times negative 2 is negative 12. Bring down the plus 14. Out of those 3 terms, you could still combine the 6m, whoa, I'm sorry, not the 6m. You could combine the negative 12 with the positive 14. And you're not going to be doing the opposite. You're just going to do this in your head. If you owe somebody $12 and you have $14, how do you end up? You have $2 left over. Let's bring down the 6m that I circled accidentally. Bring down the equal sign. There it is. And over here, you're going to distribute. 3 times m is 3m. 3 times 2 is positive 6. Bring down the minus 10. And out of those 3 terms, you could combine the positive 6 with the negative 10. And once again, you're going to do this in your head. You're not going to actually write anything. Just what is a positive 6 minus 10? If you have $6, you owe $10. How do you end up? Negative 4. So you end up with a minus 4. And of course, you bring down the 3m. This is your new simplified equation. And now you could solve by getting m's to one side. I want to subtract 3m. Cancel. Subtract 3m. You're going to have 3m plus 2 equals negative 4. And now I'm going to subtract the 2 right there to get rid of it. Subtract 2 over here. My new equation will read 3m equals negative 6. And of course, if we divide by 3 and divide by 3, m equals negative 2. And that's our answer. Be ready for that on the test tomorrow. So that's half of your test right there, guys. Studying last week's quiz and also the worksheets from 8.1 and 8.2, but specifically last week's quiz. That's a shortcut right there. That's the important part right there. What else do you need to do to be ready for tomorrow's quiz? You need to study the homework worksheets 8.3 and 8.4, which is on distributed property with polynomials. That's really not difficult at all. It's just distributing one term at a time and then combining like terms afterward. Let's check that out. So here's my worksheet 8.3. And we've already done videos on this. You could go back and check those videos out. But it's as simple as distributing one term at a time. So like, let's take a look at number 6, for example. Right here you would distribute 2x times 2x, and we'd get 4x squared. And then 2x times positive 4, that's going to be a positive 8x. And then a negative 9 times a positive 2x, it's a negative 18x. And last but not least, negative 9 times positive 4. I'm calling it negative 9 because there's a minus sign in front of it. Negative 9 times positive 4 is negative 36. Now, out of those 4 terms, the 2 middle ones could be combined, the plus 8x and the minus 18x. If you add positive 8x with negative 18x, you're not changing exponents, you're just combining. Your final answer will be 4x squared minus 10x minus 36. That's simple, right? Now, there will be one that's slightly more challenging, kind of like the distributing the binomial into the trinomial. That's definitely more interesting. So let's take a look at, let's do number 13 here, okay? I want to go 2h, I want to distribute that one first. 2h times 2h squared, what is that? 4h to the third. And then 2h times 3h. Positive 6h squared. Now make sure that you put this plus sign right here, guys. If you don't, it's going to look weird with nothing between it. It really is a positive, because a positive times a positive is a positive. As a matter of fact, all these are going to be positive because everything's positive on both of these parentheses. So let's continue. 2h times 4, that's positive 8h. Let's go for the other one. Positive 3 times 2h squared. Positive 6h squared. Now check this out. Instead of writing it right here, 6h squared, because after all, I'm going to have to combine this guy with this guy over here, right? But instead of doing that, what I'm going to do is write it below. So I'm going to organize it already. Instead of going positive 3 times positive 2h squared and getting a positive 6h squared and writing it at the end, I'm going to write it right below the other h squared term. And then 3 times 3h, that's going to be 9h, positive 9h, but notice I'm going to write it right below the other h term. And last but not least, 3 times 4, that's positive 12, and I'm going to write that at the very end. So instead of writing this polynomial over here on the side, I kind of organized them, h squared over h squared, h over h. You could have written it over here if you wanted to. It's just going to be very long. And then you got to start circling what you're going to be combining. But if you organize them as you go, then you don't have to really circle anything. You're just combining from the top to the bottom. So right here, 6h squared plus 6h squared, that's a total of 12 of those h squares. Now, you do not add exponents. The only times exponents change is when you're multiplying. The next terms are going to be what? 17h, and the last term? Plus 12. There you go. Was that difficult? No. And that's probably the hardest question on the quiz tomorrow. I mean, I guess the solving ones that we did on the previous quiz is a little bit more challenging than this. But it's really a great opportunity to get an A on a 100-point test tomorrow. Okay, all you got to do is study. So, I decided to not put any word problems in either. I was going to, but nah. So that's about it, guys, to get ready for the test tomorrow. It's 100 points. Study last week's quiz. Study your homeworks. It's only 4 sections. It's really all about distributive property and combining like terms. And you should be ready for the test. I selected all the questions from the homework assignments and from last week's quiz. Okay. Good luck.